Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Business Lounge. I'm your host, Walton. It is, of course, Think Tank Thursday, the second edition. Last Thursday we had Ben Cousins on. Ben, an entrepreneur and investor in the Bitcoin space, explored how London is quickly becoming a new epicenter of Bitcoin growth. In terms of the number of people involved in the space, in terms of the businesses being built in the space, and also the level of discussion with regulators increasing in the space, and who better to talk about policy in the UK than the CEO of Bitcoin Policy UK, a good friend of mine. One of the most vivacious Bitcoiners in the British Bitcoin scene. Susie Violet Ward travels all over the world to Bitcoin conferences. It's always a pleasure to see her, and it's a pleasure to have you join us in the show. Welcome to the show, Susie.
That was a fantastic introduction. Thank you so much, Walton.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here in this beautiful studio that we have here at RoxomTV. You've already been on someone else's show here first, though. I heard.
Yes.
Controversial, but you're a real asset in the space, and so I'm not surprised that I only had invited you on her show. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Bitcoin Business Lounge. I want to talk to you a little bit about how you first came into the Bitcoin space. I remember, I think we met 2 or 3 years ago at the Bitcoin Beach Retreat, where you gave a very passionate speech about how Bitcoin can help every family in the UK, or at least that was the kind of message I took away from it. Tell us a little bit about
I remember you heckling.
Yes, in fact, you praised me for the heckling, which is rare, maybe, but always appreciated. So yeah, tell us about your Bitcoin background personally, and then we'll get into a little bit about how BP UK came about.
Yeah, my Bitcoin. I actually remember that really well. It was really funny. If you hadn't have been there, I don't think it would have been as much fun. Definitely not. And I think the funniest thing that I remember about that is you had your dog and you had your glasses on, and my kids said, "Why is that blind man shouting at you?"
Yeah, it's not the first time that that's been mistaken. I'll tell you another story afterwards. It's a good one.
It was hilarious. So my journey into Bitcoin, there's no one moment. Oh, for me, there are just so many penny drop moments. It happens along the way, and I don't know. I just started looking into it in 2017. I sent a few articles to my husband. He ignored me. He actually sent me those. He was like, "I'm so sorry."
Shout out, Rob. We love you.
Yeah, he completely ignored me, and then I kept chipping away, trying to say, "Look, come on, we should look into this." And then one day I decided that I wanted to buy some Dogecoin because I'd read an article.
Wait, so you hadn't bought Bitcoin? You just like learned about Bitcoin and then went, "I'm gonna buy some Dogecoin."
Well,
that really?
Well, yeah. So the reason is, and this is why I now understand why shitcoins are so bad. Like I can see it now. At the time I didn't really understand, because I read an article where they had said, "Oh, you know, Bitcoin's a boomer coin, Cardano's where you need to be, Dogecoin, that's going to be the currency of tomorrow." And you're right at the beginning of your journey and you really don't understand the difference, but you don't get that they're VC companies with huge marketing campaigns.
This point is I want to discuss a little bit more. I used to run a lot of Twitter Spaces. I think I hosted about 1,000 hours in the first 9 months of it existing, and then maybe had to retire a little bit from it. But in one of those spaces, we discussed how journalistic integrity can be compromised without the journalists themselves knowing. 100%. There was a Bloomberg reporter that was in the Twitter Spaces, and I asked, "Why do you have so many articles about shitcoins, about crypto?" And she said it's because it's what our viewers want. And so I kind of drilled a little bit more on this, and it basically came to, Well, the journalists have the prerogative to write about what they want to, but there are essentially quotas for different topics. Now, the quotas are based on data of traffic through the website, and I then articulated a way that this system can be hijacked. In the shitcoin space, where essentially they are printing money, they can give some of that to influencers, to authorities that then drive traffic to specific articles, thereby hijacking this system that is within like a corporate media organization that is meant to give the viewers what they want, but actually ends up being hijacked by shitcoin money. And of course, I mean, she was not happy at this theory.
Shitcoin money that can be printed through token issuance.
She this was I can't remember the name, but this was this was 4 or 5 years ago at this point. She was adamant that no, that couldn't happen, and these organizations are perfectly have the highest levels of integrity. And I'm trying to explain. It's not even you're not even being malicious here. This is just. And it's not even really incompetence. It's just you have a system that is this way, and it can be hijacked because ultimately, it's about incentives and the media. Whilst there are many journalists who want to do the right thing, it's difficult for them when they have these sorts of systems that they're working within. You're a journalist yourself. And you've talked about essentially seeing this as a consumer on the other end with the. With articles about things like Dogecoin.
Yep. And that's how I started. I read an article, I thought I was in the know. And I didn't understand that. You've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed how it works. But I wouldn't have known that at the beginning of my journey. I thought I was doing the research. So when you have people in the space that say, do your research, go out, you should know better, the information's out there. Well, is it? Like, where? And how do you know what's real?
There's lots of information out there. There's lots of misinformation out there, right?
Exactly that. Yeah. And as a journalist, I have to disassociate myself from the fiat system. So I can write a number go up article, and I write one at the beginning of the year. What will the Bitcoin price do in 2024, 2025? My best article that I have. And do you know what? It's the one that takes me the least amount of time to write, because I can just pick out all of these charts, chuck it together, gets tons of page views, and I get like nice amounts of money like for a few months after. However, if I go and I interview,
so journalists get paid like a commission almost based on the attention of the article.
I do, yeah. So I get paid.
That's like, even worse then. So then you've got like a long tail on the.
So it's got to be clickbaity, and it's got to be what people want to read. I know it's got to be what people want to read, but usually that's number go up. And you and I both know that number go up is the least important and exciting part of Bitcoin.
I don't know if it's the least important, but yeah, maybe one of the least exciting. Like
I think it's the least important. When you think of the freedom aspect, the technology.
Okay, let's say Bitcoin just stays at $100,000 forever, Susie. How would you feel?
Oh, so that's a very good point. I suppose.
Yeah. More people don't start coming in. Like
you're right. There's a psychological aspect to it. That's important for adoption.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Okay. Good point.
It's also that like if the number doesn't keep going up, well, why is it not keep going up? Well, probably because it's like paper Bitcoin, which again is not. Like you can have the freedom technology being able to send censorship-resistant payments without intermediaries. I don't think that will ever be lost, but like, what sort of value can you send through that network if lots of people don't actually use it? If all the Bitcoin's held by custodians, for example.
I didn't mean that when I said number go up is the least important part. I just meant as a technology, as a system that's never been hacked, as something that's got 99.9% uptime. If I was going to put all of these things in a list of what makes it great, the maths and the number go up technology is not necessarily something that I find.
I think it's more that there's nothing to educate your readers on. You can make kind of future predictions, but you're not an astrologer or whatever.
No.
Like you're people say that what is it? TA is like astrology for men or something, right? Like I think if you're a good journalist, which I know that you are, Susie, like you want to educate your audience, right? And so that how much can you educate them on some future promise? Well, that you can't really.
It's not, but it's what gets the clicks. So you get like a baseline fee, and then if it hits over a certain number, you get paid per click over like a threshold. So the articles that I write, where I go and I interview people in the space. So, for example, if I'm writing about Bitcoin as a freedom money, and I go and I speak to people that are using it as a freedom money, maybe they've had to flee an authoritarian government, or they've got a story that's personal to the fact that this.
Did you go to Oslo again this year?
No, we were invaded.
I didn't go to
Oh,
Vegas.
you went to
No,
Vegas?
I didn't go to either. No, neither.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately,
no,
but no, we went to Oslo last year when you were talking about
Yeah.
these, people who are really kind of on the edge of, I don't know, in countries where civil liberties are being infringed upon, right? It is more in
It's
a
a
more extreme
lifeline.
way. It's a bit different.
It's a lifeline, and people need to understand that. So if I go and I interview people about their stories, and then I put it into an article that's easily digestible, and I put it out there, that will get very, very few page views in comparison to the number go up articles that I can write.
Yeah, but that's because mostly in the West, it's a store of value, right? So people hearing about some poor people halfway around the world using it, they're like, well, it's not going to help me get rich.
But,
Whereas hearing that like other in what are they called? Industries getting into Bitcoin, that's a different.
But I'm here to educate
I
people.
agree. I know. I'm playing devil's advocate here,
Yeah,
right?
but that's why it's difficult, because I know that I will not get enough views to make any extra money on that article. It's probably taken me 3 or 4 days rather than a couple of hours. So I have to make choices where I take a financial hit in order to educate properly. Because I'm aware of the system.
This is the artist struggle, isn't it? To do the like meaningful work.
Yeah.
You somehow have to like take a bit of money from the man, and then put it to kind of to the inspiring work, to the stuff that you think is important to the.
There's no other way of doing, or take the hit yourself. Knowing that you could make more money if you went down that road, but knowing that's not why you're in Bitcoin at all, and just having to make that conscious decision to do the right thing, and disassociate yourself from fiat.
Do any of the mainstream media pay in Bitcoin? I'm guessing not.
No.
How do you dissociate from fiat?
I go on less holidays and I spend less money. I drink tap water when I go to conferences.
So it's just like austerity is what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. So like, I'll give you an example. When I go to a conference, right, once I will not go out for dinner generally, and I will just drink water in the evenings, and I basically just I act like a struggling
All right,
artist.
we need to talk to Mick from Geyser and get like a little
No.
like fundraising going so that Susie doesn't
No, that would-
starve on holiday here.
No,
Sorry,
I'm
at
happy.
conferences, right?
I'm happy doing it. It's fine. I just don't spend
I mean,
the
I like
money.
intermittent fasting too. I just don't go days. Like it's.
No, but I know, but I do that in my head. I'm thinking, oh, it's great. I'm just fasting
Exactly,
at a conference, so
yeah.
it doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. But you're saying, how do you do it? And I just don't spend the money. That's how I do it.
Yeah. So what do you since becoming a Bitcoiner?
Yeah.
What have you stopped spending money on?
Oh, we didn't go on holiday for ages.
Okay.
Ages. I don't buy clothes really very often. I didn't think this was gonna turn into this. I've got one van.
One van.
Yeah, one kind of vehicle.
Okay.
We don't.
One family
One
vehicle.
family vehicle, yeah, which is a camper
I
van.
think that's big. Yeah.
So we
Cut down.
don't have multiple. I'm just very careful with knowing what we need and making sure that we don't, spend. I only put my heating on in the winter for an hour or so in the morning.
I
and
feel
then
like this is the most British thing ever. It's
I
like
know,
it's
use a
like
heated blanket.
suffering temperatures for the cost. Hey, America, sell us some cheap energy, and then you know, we can fix this. All right.
I can't afford to even heat my house.
Although energy's not as bad as it was like during the, you know, when Russia-Ukraine kicked off, I swear it was like 50 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity, and now we're like,
we never got that high.
oh, I swear, well, okay, maybe close to. It's like half that now, whatever. It's still a lot.
It's still expensive.
Which brings me nicely onto the topic of mining. Okay, mining in the UK doesn't work, right, because energy is too expensive. But mining is important. I have a bit axe that I turn off and on because it's a bit noisy, and I'm like, I can't focus. Shh, be quiet. Like, how is home mining meant to be a thing when they're really annoying?
You're talking about the decibel, like the noise.
So exactly, I'm being playful here, Susie, but I know you are someone who's very passionate about the importance of mining and using mining to educate people who are outside of Bitcoin about Bitcoin. I believe before becoming CEO of BP UK, you were the mining expert. Is that right?
I really don't like the word expert.
Okay. Well,
I would say I was the head of mining and sustainability.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
You are a researcher on mining and policy
Yes.
for BP UK. Tell us about how you got involved with BP UK, where it came from, and how you became
How it happened.
how you became the boss.
Yeah. Okay. So that actually started from my writing. I used to have a column called My Two Sats in.
Great name.
Yeah,
Great name.
it. Well, it was fantastic because I could just go off. Now I have to write factual pieces where everything I say is backed up.
I think I first saw you on some Channel 4 thing, and this was when you had, I don't know, under 1,000 followers on Twitter or something like this. Is it Channel 4? You were on purple background. I can't remember, some news show, and you were talking about Bitcoin and CBDCs. I was like, she's speaking too well for someone in the media. What's going on here? And then it was like, oh no, she actually is like a low-key Bitcoiner on Twitter. And then then you blew up.
Yeah, so that was the way that happened. It started off. That was GB News, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Anyway.
Okay, I don't know the one that you're thinking.
We'll find it. We'll work it out later. But
yeah.
but you were on mainstream news discussing CBDCs and Bitcoin with authority and in an informed way. Which if you're a Bitcoiner, you almost a lot of time avoid mainstream media because of how ill-informed the people are speaking about things like Bitcoin and CBDCs. Yeah. So you had this placement, and then BP UK said.
Well, no, I wrote.
What's up, Susie?
No, I wrote an article about how Bitcoin could help save the environment, and it went into City AM, which was a mainstream paper.
I think I remember reading this.
Yeah, and Freddie read that article because they were starting up Bitcoin Policy UK, so he was going to be the head of policy, and they needed somebody to head up mining.
Nice.
So because he'd read this article, and he obviously thought, well, how many people in the UK understand mining? And I didn't really understand it to the depth that I did. I just knew what it could do, so it could tap into methane. Methane mitigation is huge. Once you get your head around proof of work, why it's important, why it's the innovation, and what it can do.
Yeah, so like oil basically is energy dense enough that shipping it is economical. When it comes to the higher fractions of these things, which are just methane and other natural gas, you can't compress it enough for it to be energy dense enough for you to transport it economically, and so therefore you need to use it at the site. And so what Susie is referencing here is that Bitcoin miners can use essentially stranded gas. It's not actually stranded, it's economically stranded. It doesn't make sense to ship it the distance it would have to go to be sold, and so therefore it needs to be used on site. And instead of just venting it into the atmosphere or flaring it, burning it off, you can actually burn it in a controlled way, run a natural gas AC generator, and plug in a bunch of Bitcoin miners.
Yep. And that's what they do, because when they flare methane, they flare it because they then release the CO2 into the environment, which is just less harmful. So they're still releasing bad gases.
Yeah, they say methane is about 100 times more potent as a
Yes.
absorber and re-emitter of infrared radiation compared to carbon dioxide.
So they try and put the CO2 out there rather than the methane.
Yeah.
But it's still not.
I mean, you're also
good
putting
enough.
out water, which is also but sure.
The point is, if you can capture it, turn it into energy, not only have you solved the problem, but you've also got another revenue stream. And it's an absolute no-brainer. They're mining off landfill in certain parts of the world. You know, they use Bitcoin mining quite heavily, and not just in America and Texas, but for demand response and grid balancing.
Absolutely.
And in the UK, you talk about me, I can't even switch on my heating. Well, I do for an hour in the
How many
morning.
giant users of electricity can just switch off because they, at a moment's notice?
You
They
can't.
can't. You can't.
So they pay in, and as they build out our renewables, especially wind, the curtailment costs are going to get larger. And at the moment, we're at £1 billion a year.
I got a great photo on the way back from Prague, coming over the North Sea of just these.
They're everywhere.
It's insane. But you don't know as
No.
a normal person. You're not going sailing through the North Sea or whatever. You don't. There are thousands and thousands of these.
Thousands. And do you see that a lot of them aren't always turned on? Did you notice that?
I mean,
Possibly
I
not.
wasn't,
I mean,
I
they're
wasn't-
like
they were a bit. They were a bit. They were a bit
windmills,
far
isn't
away,
it? Yeah.
Susie. You know.
Exactly. But you'll often see that a lot of these turbines aren't switched on, and the reason is because they have to build out the grid for the max capacity. So when the wind is really blowing, it overwhelms the grid, and they can't take the electricity. So the government pay the wind producers to switch off.
They also export something. Like I've got a good. I'll send it to you afterwards. There's a good site someone built, like looking at the UK energy mix. Sometimes wind goes to like 66% or something of our daily generation. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, it's all these energy markets are interconnected, and
they're not very efficient.
they're not very efficient. I wish Germany didn't abandon nuclear and buy that Russian psyop on their Green Party, right?
Why did they?
Well, because the Russians literally now, do I have evidence for this? Like, no, but this is a good theory and I like it. All right, so basically, apparently the Russians pushed money into the Green Party in Germany, and the idea that nuclear is bad for the environment, right? And then the Green Party got the Germans to close it all down, and then they were then dependent on Russian gas, and then Russia said, yeah, maybe we'll just jack the prices up and then do Russia-Ukraine war, right? And then energy prices went like this, and if Germany hadn't abandoned nuclear.
It's very odd why nuclear power plants are being shut down when it's the densest, greenest, most efficient energy source that we've got. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but what about Chernobyl? What about Fukushima? Susie, do you not have any care for the environment? Do you not care about all these people?
I think we know mistakes were made.
I agree. Don't build nuclear power plants on what do you call them? Where there are lots of earthquakes, for example, where you have,
But that's another thing that's a brilliant solution that gets demonized. We see it all the time.
France seems to do nuclear pretty well, right? Like, you don't hear about French nuclear power plants exploding all
There's
the time.
plenty.
And they have a lot of nuclear power.
There's lots.
Quite a few here.
We've got a couple in the UK.
Right? Like,
Bradwell, I think, has got a big
there's one near like Anglesey or something, isn't there? Like up northwest.
Yeah, so
There's a
they're
few.
fine.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah.
And they are what we should be spending, but it takes a long time to build a nuclear plant, and we're just not putting the investment in. We're putting the money into wind.
Rolls-Royce are trying to develop small nuclear reactors.
They
Have you
are.
heard about this?
Yes, I have.
Huxley's going to orange pill them, and then we're going to save
He's
the world.
working on it. I know that.
We'll
Yeah,
do it. Yeah.
definitely.
Huxley's a member of the London Bitcoin community, who I'm sure will be joining us on the show at some point in the future.
He's also a part of Bitcoin Policy UK and helps us with our educational efforts.
He's a phenomenal Bitcoiner.
I love what he does.
But back to BP UK. So you joined as the
Head of mining.
Yep. and
sustainability.
And then what happened?
I just carried on writing and researching, and we wanted to find all these opportunities in the UK, because you can't tell governments that it's good or business, you have to show them.
Oh, I agree with this.
So we were just trying to find ways of tapping into ways that that we could identify business opportunities, because there's plenty.
I don't think it's just even government. I think it's anyone who's not a Bitcoiner. I think Bitcoiners don't understand influence very well, and their high time preference with their educational efforts. And actually, sometimes, you know, saving all your money maybe doesn't look like you're winning then. And so when you're preaching this thing that's saving, you know, it's going to make you rich while you're acting poor, maybe is a confusing signal to some people. But I agree with the influencing government.
Are you talking about me?
I'm saying everyone. I think all Bitcoiners. I think this is where it's a like contrasting thing of like how much, you know, if like some Bitcoiners think it's the greatest praise to be asked if they're homeless, because it means they've got really good OPSEC. I'm like, I don't know. Like at least dress like you don't smell bad. Like you don't look like you smell bad, right? Like that should be like a minimum standard for everyone in public, no? But I think, I don't know. You get people like Jack Dorsey dressing like surfer bum, and then everyone copies it. Is kind of what I think, really, to be honest. But a bit of a tangent here. So you joined BP UK. You kept on writing articles. You wrote articles in the mainstream media for Forbes and
City AM.
City
AM was 2023, and then my column, Crypto AM, was the umbrella that it was under, and then that died. So once that died, then I just focused on Forbes.
Okay. How can people find more of your writing on?
The easiest way is to just follow me on Twitter, because I've got a link to my Forbes articles in my bio. Or if you wanted to look me up on City AM, go to City AM and you've got all my ranty opinion pieces on there, and just put my name, Susie Violet Ward, in, and they'll come up.
Cool. Okay. So you kept on writing, and then BP UK said, we want you to be our supreme leader. Is that right? Something like that?
Not quite.
Not quite.
So there was a gap, and because we are a team of volunteers, it's not easy to find people to work.
You're volunteers. Interesting.
We have no funding.
So by contrast, BPI,
very little funding. Sorry, very small amount of funding.
Sure. BPI, the Bitcoin Policy Institute in the US, was funded by David Bailey and some other early Bitcoiners, and they championed David Zell, a great young mind in the Bitcoin space, to create this thing instead of him going to Harvard Law School. I don't know if you know that's the origin. So he wanted to go to Harvard Law to go become a lawyer, and David Bailey bribed him not to. And now we have Bitcoin Policy Institute that now get much greater donations from, you know, people much wealthier than David Bailey.
They've got the business over there, though, haven't they?
You know, they get donations from people like Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting, because almost like Jack Dorsey has won the last two elections in the US, right? With Twitter 4 years ago, and then this year kind of championing Trump through
You think
Bitcoin.
he was championing Trump?
Well, I mean, he donated to BPI, and BPI wrote a bunch of Trump speeches. I don't know.
Or could it just be that they're apolitical?
So Jack Dorsey runs the world, people. No, I'm just kidding.
They're just apolitical. You can't choose who you have to deal with.
I agree. And the BPI are not a lobbying group. They're an educational group, right? And I think this is. Here's a question for you, Susie. Where is the line between education and lobbying?
That's a really good question. Well, providing you're just giving them facts and not opinion, because we are truly apolitical. And I would say, me as a person, I'm apolitical. I vote because I have to, but I don't feel an affiliation towards any party. And so therefore, I don't have...
I didn't vote in the last election. I just bought Bitcoin instead. Well, look, all parties are just going to increase the spending. They're all going to just choose to print more money. So buying Bitcoin is the only vote you have, really. You can't vote to decrease the size of government anymore.
No.
Otherwise, that's what I'd do.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know Bitcoin will ultimately lead to...
It'll be nice.
separation of money and state and smaller government, which is the hope.
Yeah.
But I'm truly apolitical. I just don't have a preference really. If I'm ticking a box, it's just because I feel obliged.
Do you think Bitcoin is political?
I think it's becoming political.
Not necessarily the industry or the space. I mean, I guess that.
No, I think it's an apolitical tool. I think
So too.
It is 100%.
But a lot of people will say, no, Bitcoin is money, and money is an example of speech, and all speech is political.
Well, I suppose you could spin it any way you'd like to, but at the end of the day, it's a neutral money. It can be
I agree with this.
It can be used for your enemies. It can be used for your
Right,
friends.
it's an open network.
Of course.
It's an opt-in, voluntary.
Even people you don't like or agree with can use it, and we're still advocating.
So you describe Bitcoin as being apolitical, and yourself as being somewhat apolitical now. Unless I'm mistaken, you're someone who's come into Bitcoin from left of Bitcoin, shall we say, rather than from right of Bitcoin.
So I probably started my life off being more right,
yeah,
and then I know it's the opposite way around with most people, and then became more left-leaning.
I went kind of right then a bit, then a little bit left, and then came back more right.
Back to the right.
Yeah.
But now I don't really know where I sit, and I actually think that the terms left and right are largely meaningless.
I think it's more that Bitcoin drives you to be probably more libertarian and less authoritarian, which is a separate axis.
And I would say I'm a libertarian rather than above. I used to describe myself as a lefty libertarian.
Yeah, I used to say I was, kind of a right libertarian, basically.
Which makes more sense than a lefty libertarian. If you could argue that a lefty libertarian isn't a thing.
Isn't lefty libertarianism just sort of anarchy though? It's just like a bit more. I don't know.
I just think they're very useless phrases that creates division.
Okay, let's say that you were previously you had politics of compassion, shall we say?
I just will support good policies.
But I'm talking about before Bitcoin, and I want to talk about how your political compass shifted with Bitcoin. Before Bitcoin, maybe you were slightly more left-leaning. Why has Bitcoin changed that for you?
I think it's the personal responsibility aspect. I like the idea of looking after people, and I think the problem that we've got with society is that communities have broken down. Mm-hmm. So the reason why we're now having to go cap in hand to governments is because they've broken up communities, and we're no longer able to look after each other.
Why do you think communities are broken up more?
I do think it comes back to broken money in a lot of ways. Maybe, back in the day, you could have one salary and you'd still have a car, a house, a holiday. Now you need 2 salaries. In the future, you'll need 3.
So it's money problems driving familial breakdown.
I think so.
I agree.
And people moving away from their communities.
Right, because you need to move. I talked about this on the show yesterday. You need to move for jobs opportunities, and then people then meet a partner and have children. Then the grandparents are hours away or whatever.
Yes, it's really tricky.
How do you and then the young mothers then feel isolated because they are more isolated than they were previously, and so then they want to go back to work, which then means there's then fewer young mothers who aren't back. There's lots of kind of incentives that drive.
Yeah.
That aren't helping things to move forwards.
No, absolutely. When I first had my first baby, I remember my husband Rob bought me a card saying "Happy Retirement." Like, I had every intention of just being at home, doing my thing, and I wasn't wedded to my career at that point. I'd have been more than happy to just have a different chapter in my life. But you
were also taking being a mother and running a household as a serious job as well.
It's hard. Right? It's the hardest job I've ever done.
My mum had 3 under 5. Like I could see that. Like she didn't work for the majority of my life, but she's one of the hardest working people I know.
It was by far the hardest job and the most important job I've ever had. But at the end of the year,
and I think undermining motherhood is one of the biggest problems society has right now, right? Is like we should be celebrating it more, and Yeah.
When you speak to a stay-at-home mum, they almost say it like it's shameful. Like, I'm staying at home. They don't say it like it's a proud, wonderful thing that they're putting all their effort into doing the most important job in the world. But my point is, at the end of that year, I went back to work. And I went back to work because it was so hard. It was a selfish thing, me going back to work. I found, but because we didn't have anyone around us. We had no help. We were like what they called like a nuclear family.
Well, if you're intelligent, then you need mental stimulation, and it's probably for an intelligent woman, it probably is difficult, kind of balancing motherhood and sufficient intellectual stimulation, where it's where it's lots of small menial tasks that you can do, but it's.
So it was, that's exactly it. It was hard. It was a combination of stressful, never-ending, and boring. So a combination of all those three things, it drives you mad.
And I think this is why you need the community, because you need the groups of the young mothers.
You need your auntie down the road. You need your mum that can help you. You need the cousin that's going to pop in for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
If you don't have that and you're just on your own looking after a baby constantly, it's really stressful. But if you've got an auntie that you can say, oh, can you take them to the swings? And if you break it up, you enjoy their time more. So I remember when I used to come back from work, I would love spending time with them because it hadn't been all day.
So here's some advice to all parents from Susie: to love your children, spend time away from them.
Pretty much.
No, I think it's very honest, and I really respect that. That you're acknowledging that to do the important things in life, you have to find balance, and that's difficult, and the fiat world makes it harder. Having time stolen from you through monetary debasement makes things harder. They're taking time away from you. I think you talked that in the current day and age you have both adults in a household having to work. I think what that then means is that they then don't have the time to maybe be as fit as they should be, maybe do things for each other that they would do. Scratch. And then it's like, sure, that too, but it's no wonder they're then inconsistent parents and throw iPads at the kids, because they're not able to look after themselves properly in the current day and age.
No, because the system is stealing from you. People are becoming more time poor. They're stressed out.
But they're not that time poor. They get home and then they're scrolling for hours, right, which doesn't help. But it's
maybe, yeah.
Not everyone, not every day, but I think there are people are, yes, they are time poor, but they're also completely overwhelmed when it comes to stimulation. Mm-hmm. People, we talked a little bit yesterday, Kiki came into the show again, and we talked about Dr. Jack's talk from Prague, about how, like, basically everyone is spiking their cortisol all the time, and it's really not good for you.
No.
And mobile devices don't help. No. As you say, the articles about the price going crazy are ones that get clicks, but outrage articles also get clicks, right? And people are addicted to consuming outrage.
Yeah, and I generally write about good, positive, well-researched Bitcoin articles, which are never going to get the views. But they're important because you've got to counteract the negative narratives that are out there that are factually incorrect, poorly researched, written by journalists who have no tech or finance background, haven't done the work in Bitcoin, and yet they're writing in the BBC, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, and then people read these. Read these articles. Those news outlets have credibility, and as a result, people think that Bitcoin isn't the amazing technology that it is. It's frustrating.
Wait, so that means we get to buy more before the price goes too crazy. That's fun. But I want to speak here to our viewers, to our listeners. I want you to think about network effects. Are you contributing to a more positive or more negative future when it comes to the kind of media you're consuming? Are you choosing a more truthful or a more fluffed version of reality? Um, it's difficult maybe balancing the reality, which can be terrible at times, with distractions. But if you don't live in reality, if you don't if you don't acknowledge where you are, how do you build from there? I gave a talk at Bloomfest a couple of weeks ago at Cyphermonk House about Bitcoin doesn't fix everything. Like, it gives you more time back, but how do you use that time? If you don't use that time, you know, I see lots of wealthy Bitcoiners that don't look the healthiest. Like, what are they doing with their time? And if you're not using your time well to look after yourself, how do you think you're going to influence other people that they can do the same when you're not doing it?
Yep.
Are you going to the Bitcoin Beach retreat?
I would love to, but it's during term time and it's in Wales, and it's about 5 hours away, and if I'm going to pull my kids out of school and get into trouble for it, then
there's no better event to do it for.
It would be to go abroad somewhere where we can actually kind of like, not Wales.
Not Wales.
Do you know,
Wait, so we had a question from one of our viewers. Is Wales a different country, and do you need to take your passport if you're going from England to Wales? No, I don't think you do.
But it is a different country.
It is a different country, though. It is a different country. I'm like, so basically, there's like, the United Kingdom is one country, and within it there are 4 countries. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Great Britain is one island of 3 countries: England, Wales, and Scotland. And then the 4th country, Northern Ireland, is then part of the island of Ireland, which also has Ireland on it, but that's a different country.
And
it's very straightforward.
And it's split into 2.
Kind of.
With a border.
Yeah, I mean, they call it the 6 counties. Some of the ones from the south.
I can understand why people get confused. If you don't live in the
There
UK.
are these things called maps, though. You know, you can kind of like.
Maybe, but.
Yeah. Who's got time for all of that?
No one.
No one, with all of the money being stolen from them.
Yeah.
Too time poor to look at maps. Give yourself back the opportunity of looking at maps and knowing where you're going.
One day your phone's gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. One day your phone's gonna die, and then this is when you need to be a Bitcoin maximalist. That's
yeah, you're gonna be looking at this paper, going, "I'm lost and I don't get it. What's going on?" That was a tangent.
I know. So where is
Beach
BP UK going next, Susie? All over the map.
No, the thing is, as I said, we're 14 volunteers, and everybody works really, really hard because they believe in the cause, which is the most beautiful thing, really. I don't really know any organisation where people work and give up their time and their expertise because they really want to see it work. This, there's no other industry or business or think tank. Everything is driven by incentives and money. This is not.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to be working on is showing how Bitcoin mining can help improve the UK, showing how it can help reduce our energy bills, showing how it can tap into stranded energy, create new revenue streams. We're going to be working with policymakers to make sure that they understand, at the very least, the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, because currently IFCA doesn't understand, and they're putting everything under same risk, same regulation. Well, how can you say that Bitcoin, as a decentralized protocol with a 65% dominance, has the same risk profile as a meme coin? It's ridiculous.
One question I have from one of our former guests to the show that I believe was asked in Prague was, how can an individual join in the lobbying efforts for Bitcoin?
Well, they go to our website,
which is
bitcoinpolicy.uk.
Bitcoinpolicy.uk, excellent.
I hope I got that right. It's quite straightforward, but bitcoinpolicy.uk. or just type in Bitcoin policy and it will come up. Yeah,
Don't trust verify, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, please double check that for me. I usually just type in Bitcoin policy and it comes up, so I never really look at the website. But yeah,
She's correct. She's correct.
go for that.
Bitcoinpolicy.uk. Become more informed,
Yes.
and then inform others. Is that
Yeah,
simple?
absolutely. Well, you can also lobby your MP. So we're going to be putting on a series of templates for things that we think are important and relevant, and you can use that template, look up your MP, and then send a letter to your MP so we can start lobbying on a big scale.
Perfect. Everyone, join the campaign. We're going to make Britain pro-Bitcoin?
Oh,
no?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie. This was Think Tank Thursday at the Bitcoin Business Lounge. I'm Walton, your host. This is RoxomTV. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.